What's up, guys? I'm Seth Gordon, and if you're watching this, obviously you're not doing anything else, so do me a favor and hit the subscribe button. You're going to want to hit that subscribe button for several different reasons anyway. One being that we're going to be posting a lot of more videos this fall of recoveries. Two, we're about to do a giveaway. I'm 92 followers short of 500. So as soon as we get 500 subscribers, I'm going to do a giveaway here. Once we get to 500, I might have something else in mind to determine the winner, whether it be to quote a time in a video or something like that, or comment something specific. So today I got a pretty interesting video for y'all. Talking with Sean Butler, the head of Longspur Tracking. We recently started SkyDog, which is the drone side of things, and so we're going to be talking about the pros and cons of drones versus dogs. Hanky, Spanky. Hank, that's Hank. That's Timber. What's up, bub? He's an escape artist, so we got like bird netting above the fence. Yeah. He runs away all the time. He doesn't go far, but he likes to go up to he likes to go visit the farm up the road and just run around the fields for whatever reason. Every time someone calls me like, hey, Hank's out again, I'm like, all right, drive up the road and get him out of the field. So without further ado, here's the debate. Okay. So anyway, how are you?
Doing good. Once we got this figured out.
Yeah, it took a while.
Yeah.
How are the hog pens coming?
I worked on those today. We're going to be adding some pigs here. I actually got one coming tomorrow, and we'll go down and have some fun with the dogs. See what happens.
Make sure you send videos to the group.
Yeah, I will.
Are you getting them from Dream Mountain?
No, these are going to be a couple more, or I should say, we just moved one of our coonies down. I'm going to get one more of those. I'm waiting on the Russians to get here.
Okay.
So, yeah, those coonies are a little tamer, so they're a little easier on the dogs.
Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, we'll start with you've been on a lot of different podcasts and interviews and stuff like that, and they all ask, who are you? Tell me about, why you started Longspur, but they never ask like what is Longspur and right. what it's becoming. So can you talk a little bit on how/why you started and how it's growing and what it is becoming today?
Yeah, I can do that. Well, we started it. I tell everybody with a dog on a string and a dream just to be a tracker. And, we became West Virginia's first licensed tracking company, took advantage of the laws that we were given, and it grew. And those first 2 years, it really grew exponentially. And then we started having trackers outside of the state take notice, such as yourself, and want to come aboard. And this will be our 5th year. We're up to about 55 trackers in 10 states. Then we noticed that people really had an interest not only just in the tracking, but in our hunting and outdoor lifestyles. So we started promoting that through some different things that we do. Showing hunts and fishing trips and stuff like that through our social media and soon through our web app, Blood Trails.
Okay.
Yeah.
So recently, you guys, or you/we as a whole, but mostly you started SkyDog drone service. So how and why did you start, like, being a dog guy for so long?
Right.
Decide to go into drones as well? I know why, but
right. Well, I mean, it's a couple different reasons. first and foremost is a business decision. I mean, we track as a business. We're in it. It's a for-profit business. It's how we make our living. And I clarify that when I say it's how we make our living. You know, training dogs, and raising quality pups. That's how we make our living. But tracking's a big part of it. And we can't afford to take financial hits. And one of the things we noticed last year in Ohio as a company, we lost out on $18,000 worth of tracks because of drones. So as that whole discussion was going on, you know, one of our good friends, Joe Tenney, who runs the Ohio Deer Tracking network and Facebook page, he bought a drone, and he went from like a deadline on his business to it just spiked upwards. So he was the first drone and dog combo guy in Ohio. So it was like, okay, we're going to have to get in on this. That's going to be the wave of the future. So we added ours, one this summer. We had another tracker just add one this week, and it looks like we're going to have two more in the sky by the time season gets here. That way we can cover Maryland, Ohio, Kentucky, and possibly even Virginia. We're talking with one of our trackers over in that country about adding one. So the other reason was also is the drone companies that are out there, a lot of them are computer geeks. They are not outdoorsmen, and they are not trackers. And you see a lot of outlandish claims on social media and on YouTube by some of these bigger companies where they're constantly downing the dogs and telling everybody that the drones are, you know, 100% fail safe. And that's just incorrect. Totally so. That's another reason we got into it, is because, you know, just as in tracking, we knew we could do it and do it right. We're going to do it and do it right with the drone and the dog combo, giving everybody that option in those states.
And you just mentioned some of the states where it's legal right now. We got Virginia, Maryland, Ohio, Kentucky. I just seen New York has a. Sounds like they're starting the paperwork. They're starting to try to get it passed in New York as well.
Right.
So kind of everybody around us, you know, is becoming legal. Do you want it to become legal in West Virginia and Pennsylvania?
We'd like to see it become legal in West Virginia and Pennsylvania, just from a business standpoint. I mean, if I can go recover 5 deer within 30 miles of my house, that's a lot better than driving 3 hours to Ohio. But it's going to take some common sense legislation, and we are working on that. It's going to take a year, maybe two legislative sessions, 2 years to get this through. But and it's going to be tough. I can't guarantee anything, but that's why we're jumping into it now, full bore, in Maryland, Ohio, and Kentucky. That way we have the infrastructure. So if it does become legal, we can jump into West Virginia and possibly even Pennsylvania if you legalize it up there. And I know that chatter's going on, and they've had some bills up in Harrisburg. Hopefully, you know, maybe it passes. So see how it goes.
The main reason we're doing this, I think it's going to take the majority of the time, is the pros and cons of dogs and drones, because I don't think a lot of people are educated about either one, really, because all anybody really shows them is the pros to either side. And I think a lot of people would, especially with drones gaining popularity, I feel people would be more drawn to them now because of just the era we live in. Everything's electronics, and you know, the old world is kind of falling behind. So
and it's you know, another thing is the world we live in. Everybody wants something right now. They can't wait. And as you know, in tracking, it's the waiting game. You got to have appropriate wait times.
Yep.
And it doesn't change with that drone. Just because you're not going in there and chasing that deer, the hunter maybe makes a gut shot, and I can go in there and fly the drone 2 hours later and find a deer, but you still can't go get that deer
Right.
until 12 or 16 hours has passed.
Yep.
So, and that's where I see, and I've seen this on some of the popular YouTube series and stuff, where they find a deer that's been, shot through the liver or a gut shot, and they're there within just 2 or 3 hours. And the next thing you know, they're getting called back by the hunter the next day because the hunter bumped the deer. And they got to go back and re-find the deer. And a lot of times they don't. I've seen that happen on some of their episodes. So one of the biggest cons for drones is an uneducated operator that's not a woodsman, that's not maybe a hunter, somebody that can really just play with their thumbs. That's what a lot of drone operators are. I mean, but you have to be an outdoorsman. You got to know, hey, this shot requires this much wait time. I can fly my drone and find it, but hey, you can't go get it till then. Now, that's where I just see a lot of problem going on. Is the drone guys, hey, we have 100% recovery rate. Well, they count a recovery as just seeing your deer on screen,
right?
Not actually putting your deer on a tailgate. So watch out for that. I mean, you hear that all the time. I mean, yeah, every drone guy I've seen out there says, hey, if I find your deer, if I see it on my screen, it's recovered to me. I'm packing up and going home.
And they get paid. You know how many times? You know how many times I'd quote a guy for price to show up and find the deer. Well, I never have charged a finding fee. I always just I tell them on the phone, it's this price to show up, and then I accept tips if it's found. Right. And then we find the deer and jump it, and it takes off, and the hunter's like, man, that was my deer. I can't blah blah blah. And then on the way out, they're like, man, I had an extra $100 for you if we would have found it. And I'm like,
we did find it.
And I don't argue, but it's just like,
right.
Yeah, that really sucks. And I'll even tell well, we did find it, but it just wasn't dead. And they're like, yeah. I'm like, that's your job to kill it. It was my job to find it. And right. I'm not pressing them to try to get a tip out of them, but it's just like.
But that's where the drone guys, a lot of them advertise that, they're $400, $500 just to come out, and then $100 recovery fee. And that means if they see your deer, it doesn't matter if it was shoulder shot and gonna survive another day, you're still paying that extra $100. And a lot of them have, and I know like the popular one on YouTube, he charges $1 a mile, anything over a 60-mile round trip. So if you live further than 30 miles from his house, you're paying $1 a mile. So you're talking, $700, $800, $900 just to see a deer on a video screen.
Right, and if it's still alive, and you're assuming it's going to stay alive, the hunter, oh man, it's still alive, all because the operator came out too early, and then if the hunter decides not to pursue it anymore because he's seen it alive, it could die 4 hours later.
It could, very well. So the way we're going to operate is we're going to try to do recommended wait times. Now, I understand there's situations where people can't wait. We had that happen last year, where we went in, Stacy Stout went in with Triton and found a deer. He didn't track it. He just did a location on it in Kentucky. But the guy had to catch a flight, and he couldn't wait. So he called in a drone, and the drone came down. It was 100 degrees air temperature. A deer's 104 degrees. They couldn't find it. And they only flew for like 20 or 30 minutes and charged him $650 and went back home. And, I can see situations where you got to rush out. Okay, I got to catch a flight. I'm only at this outfitter, through this evening. I'd like to know if my deer's here or not.
Right.
Okay, but that doesn't mean that you can get your hands on it. you
Mhm.
know, because we want to do appropriate wait times, and it may call for, hey, find it with the drone, but you may have to track it the next day with the dog if it gets up and leaves that first bed.
That's something I was wondering when they're using thermals on a hot day. Like I've seen them do it at night when it's cold or during hunting season. Everything's like gray and the heat signatures are red. If they're doing it when it's that hot out, does everything just light up red? Or
Yeah, now I run mine with the heat showing white, and it does. That's what it does. The tree canopy this time of year during like 2 o'clock in the afternoon will just be glowing white hot. So there's no way you can get a heat signature under the canopy. And then if you're flying over tall grass or fields, anything in that field that gathers sunlight is going to show up as a heat signature. So you might be flying over like a rocky field,
right,
and you're going to have to check every rock, every log, anything. Bare dirt. Bare dirt gathers heat and gives off a heat signature. But they are more effective when it's like the temperature starts dropping in the evenings. I mean, we can go out and find deer pretty quick when the temperature drops down to about 70 degrees or so in the
okay,
evening here in the summer. But yeah, you are correct. You they they are limited. Um, if you're dealing with an 80 to 100-degree day, you're only going to be able to fly early in the morning, late in the evening, or at night to do location with a thermal. When the leaves come off and excuse me, and it starts cooling down, they're a lot more effective.
right,
So yeah, topography also has a lot to do with it too. You know, they're a lot better over flat fields than they are over a mountain trying to look down into a hollow. So
right. Yeah, I'm sure it'd be really effective, especially in Ohio where it is legal. A lot of that. I mean, down south, yeah, you're more hilly and stuff. But I've hunted way on the west, in the western part of the state where everything's flat and you could watch
right,
your dog run away for 3 days. It's so flat out there.
yeah, exactly. And I mean, one of the things we're discovering on the pet searches is they are a very handy tool to cross out country quick. Where if I can't see under the canopy and I'm on a 400-acre farm, I can at least check all the fields in about 30 minutes and
Hmm.
say your dog isn't here, or your lost calf isn't here, and then we can track the dogs in the woods. So if it's something where we just need to, cross out some country, like in Kentucky and elk country, when we're tracking elk, a lot of times that's on 500-600 acre strips on top of these mountaintop removals. It's all head high grass. Well, if I can just fly a thermal over that and say, okay, that elk isn't on this, timber or mountaintop removal, then we can get the dogs and go on the outside edge, try to pick up the track if they shot it on the mountaintop and it exited. So it helps. The last elk track I was on down there, we spent like all day, and it ended up becoming a grid search with the dogs, and it was tough. And I was like, man, a drone down here, I could have done this in 2 hours instead of 8.
All right.
So yeah. So there's a pro
Yeah.
for you.
What do you think the greatest advantages are of a dog using dogs over drones?
The greatest advantage of using a dog over a drone is that as a dog handler, as a wildlife biologist, I can tell you what the dog's telling me about your deer, and I can fill that story in for you.
Right.
With the drone, I've only got two things I can tell you. I see your deer, I don't see your deer. With the dog, I can go out there and go exactly where the deer went, with the dog telling me through the lead, I'm on a dead deer or I'm on a live deer. And after interview and getting on the ground with the dog and seeing the evidence, I can pretty much say, okay, you've shoulder shot this deer. We've gone 800 yards. It's bedded twice. The dog stopped showing interest after the second bed. Your deer's going to be back on camera.
Mhm.
I got to go. And, you know, with the drone, I might be able to find that deer and zoom in and say it's shoulder shot. Or maybe I can't. Maybe all I can see is, hey, I see your deer here. I can tell it's injured. That's all I know about it.
Mhm.
So that's the biggest advantage. Um, and, you know, dogs do get hot on hot days, but they still operate on hot days.
Yeah.
So, and we train for that. We're, um, yeah, I prefer to get my dog out of the vehicle, but um, if hunters want the drone, I'm going to tell him all the pros and cons I can as we get there, and then just go off their decision. But you know, when we start getting slam packed in the rut, I could see the drone being a good thing. You know, flying it first, and maybe. And I know it sounds bad, but you know, if you can make a 10-minute or a 15-minute recovery, you can move on to the next hunter, help them out,
Right.
and that's that's easy money on a tracker. As you know, when you hit one of them 4-track days, you get wore out.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yep.
and if it's as easy as sitting in the lawn chair and flying that drone in 15 minutes, saying, "There's your deer, let's go get some pictures,"
Right.
I'll take that. I'm getting old, so that's where technology will help me.
So going back a little bit
Hmm.
to the whole wanting it legal and everything, uh,
Right.
I personally, I really, because I get like a lot of guys that I work with always ask me, like, oh, well, and a lot of them are uneducated, of course, but
Hmm.
I've been seeing a lot about the drone recovery, blah blah blah, and you're like, you know, what do you think about it, or different things like that, and I really don't know because I've seen how quick the dog recovery or tracking with dogs has gone. You know, when I first started, I also started, like, this is going on my 5th year, um, and there was, from State College west, there was 4 trackers,
Hmm.
and I was the only one in, like, the central part of it. There was one down by Maryland, one way up north in Contanning, and one in Tyrone, still by State College. I'm the only one, like, kind of in the Johnstown area, is kind of neutral.
Right.
There's no one around me. If you get on one of those websites and look up trackers in this area now, I actually haven't looked since, like, I think this past, like, late winter, like February time, but there's got to be 25, 30 people on there now.
Right.
And it's just insane how many horror stories you have. Because, like starting out 5 years ago, my first, even second year doing this was like, man, I got to convince, more guys to start doing this, because I'm getting over 200 calls during bow season. I can't,
Right.
I'm doing 20, 30, maybe 40 tracks, and working full time. Like, I can't do this many calls.
Right.
You need more people. And now, now that the years go on and more people start doing it, it's like more people need to get out of doing this because they're doing it all wrong. And
Right.
and if you look up how many people are, like what state has, like, the most hunters per capita, I can't remember if Pennsylvania's first or second, because I know Wisconsin's a close.
I think Pennsylvania is first.
Yeah, I can't
Um,
remember if it was Pennsylvania then Wisconsin or vice versa, but there's just so many hunters, so there's so many people that want to, like myself, that want to do more in the outdoor other than just hunt. So, and
right.
this is kind of a way to do that. Um, so if drones become legal here, I feel there's going to be so much more people jumping onto that as well.
Right.
Then you're going to have the same amount of dogs plus the same amount, if not more, people doing drones as well. And there's just going to be, I'm not going to get any calls anymore to come find my deer. It's going to be, hey, I had this person and this person come out and look for my deer, and they
Yeah.
had no idea what they're doing. Can you come out now? And I'm not going
Right.
to really have any other calls to go on. So you almost force a go on those.
Right.
I've done several the last 2 years on where another dog was already out there and they had no interest. Like, they couldn't even get them to start tracking, or they chased every animal that they came across and tampered with the
Right.
track. And those are, I mean, you know as well, it happens to everyone, but those are really hard tracks to recover on.
Right.
You can find them, it just takes a lot more work.
Right. And that's, that's what we're seeing in Ohio. Everybody and their cousin become a tracker over the last 2 or 3 years. Then the drone phenomenon. And I think that middle ground is where it's going to be at of, a dog and a drone, or having a drone available on every dog track. I think that's going to be the business model of the future. I think these drones I think they're here to stay. As these new states like West Virginia, like Pennsylvania, come on board with them, I think they need to look at the surrounding states and maybe legislate just a little more on some rules and regulations, maybe some licensing. Right now, all you got to do is, if you're going to charge commercially for it, is go get a Part 107 pilot's license, which is $150. Um, you know, eh, Maybe if they had some kind of state licensing requirements and insurance requirements, um, it might thin a few of the crowd down. Um, but I mean, it's what it's done with their requirements in tracking in West Virginia. There's not too many trackers in West Virginia other than the ones that work for Longspur.
Right.
So
But you guys have a lot of regulations and requirements to track in West Virginia.
yeah,
That's one thing I don't understand in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is so strict on all laws, like not just hunting laws, but I work for the Department of Corrections. I know a lot of people that are in prison for things that other states you'd get a maybe a hefty fine for, but
right,
they got a couple years in prison time, and but their hunting laws have always where there's very few states where you cannot hunt on Sundays, and
right.
Pennsylvania is one of them.
Hmm.
Baiting, there's all kinds of strict laws in Pennsylvania, but when it comes to tracking, there's there's not. Your
Yeah,
dog has to be on a lead, and you have to have a license for what you're tracking. And you
and
cannot, as a tracker, you cannot dispatch the animal if it's still alive.
right.
That's the only laws, and I don't. And like when I first started out, and there was no one around doing it, I thought it was a good thing because I'm like, well, thank God, because I have no idea. I don't know who to get a hold of or how to get a hold of anybody to try to get a certification if you needed one.
Right,
And now looking on it, it's like I wished there was more laws
right.
on.
Yeah. See, West Virginia is more concerned about the licensing and the quality than they are the how good the dogs are, because there are no testing requirements or like or tests you take through the state or anything like that. But you're right. As tight as Pennsylvania is on most things, it surprises me that they don't have some kind of license system for trackers. Um, but I mean, I guess, in the long run, if you're good and you work out, and you find a lot of deer, you're gonna prove above everybody else.
Right.
So
It just takes a lot of time because
yeah,
I've been, like I said, when I started, there was very few people doing it. And it comes back to what you said earlier is people can't wait. I do,
right,
I have people that I've maybe people that I've tracked for in the past, they'll wait on me. Now, if
right,
it's a buddy of someone that I tracked for or somebody that is, I've got calls to. I actually just had one this past year where usually they find you through whatever website or just Google searching or Facebook or something. But the one guy actually found me through my YouTube channel and didn't know that I was that close to where he was hunting at. It was in Ligonier, so it was like
right,
30 minutes away, and he really wanted me to come out. And I'm like, well, I have a Halloween party to go to, plus it was liver shot. I'm like, we're better off waiting until first thing in the morning because he shot it right before dark.
right.
And he was like, well, he lived like an hour away or something. He
Mhm.
wanted to get home and wasn't sure if he could come back the next day. And he's like, but it's a big buck, and I'm like, well, if that's big, let's just wait, and end up getting another tracker that night. And I don't know what happened. I don't know if they found it or bumped it, or I had
Huh.
no idea, but they just wanted me to come out, but just couldn't wait till the next morning.
That happens. That definitely happens, and that's part of hunter education. We got to educate these hunters on what appropriate wait times,
Yeah.
and it can be tough to do. You've probably seen when we put up educational pieces on social media how many old wives' tales are popping up by hunters out there, and it just makes you want to shake your head that they'll argue against proven technique and science.
Yep. Yep.
So, and will you get lucky every once in a while? I guarantee you will.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not saying every liver shot deer takes 6 to 8 hours to die, but a good majority of them do. And every once in a while, you'll shoot one that'll be dead within an hour. I mean, there's areas in the liver with really good artery systems that it'll kill them within the hour. It'll kill them pretty quick. But do you really want to take that risk if you're tracking like a 170-inch buck? I mean, I'd rather wait.
And it all depends on the time of year too. Like our craziest track we ever had was a buck shot in the peak of the rut. And when we found this deer, he was confident that he shot it in the gut, but he watched it run about 100 150 yards. He was dogging a doe when he shot. He got to stop for a split second, shot too far back. It ran about 150 yards and then stopped and stood there for, he said, only about 30 seconds. And it took off jogging again. I'm like, well, it's kind of a little unusual, but it is a rut, whatever. He lost blood after like 200 yards. Well, we tracked that deer. It was 3 miles when we found it, and not a single bed.
Wow.
And when he gutted it, it entered straight through what it would have been. He cut the liver out perfectly. There was a hole dead center in the middle of the liver and exited through the guts. And that thing went 3 miles and never. And they say, gut shots kill deer from septic, blood poisoning. So it takes time. And all they know is that their stomach hurts at the time. That's why they bed down. Unless that hurts too much, then they'll stand there. But I think he was just so rutted up that he was like, all right, I got a belly ache, but I don't really care. It's the rut.
Right.
And so he just ran and ran and ran until he fell over.
Right. Yeah. I mean, hey, when they're chasing a doe and this is, going back to educating hunters, wait times, I tell them after Halloween, double your wait time.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're waiting, 6 hours on a liver shot, you might want to wait 12. If you're waiting 12 hours on a gut shot, you might want to wait 24, because these bucks, testosterone up, they're going to do some amazing things. And we see something new every year out there. And it's like, wow, I can't believe that. And they're tough animals. They got a will to survive, and they have a will to procreate. So when it's the rut, they're going to chase that doe, and they ain't going to let go until their heart stops beating on them, basically, is the only thing to stop them. Yeah.
I think that's, that would be another pro of a dog over a drone. Like in that situation, that was 3 miles away. Granted, we got lucky. If that was probably, most places we would have found that deer because of the property lines. But we got lucky that he was hunting a big farm. He had already got permission from the next farm, which was a very large piece of property. And then on the other side of that, it was game lands, and that's where the deer ended up dying. It almost made it. It was 100 yards from a private hunting camp, so it almost made it onto another private land, but it did die on the game lands. So we got lucky there. But if I'm a drone operator, I wouldn't think to fly that far away, because that deer didn't do a lot. He had a couple, corners, a couple turns, but it wasn't very much. Like it was mostly a straight line.
Right.
So,
yeah. And I mean, and I'd tell you, just doing these pet rescues, yeah, I can fly wherever I want to because, the federal government owns the airspace. But I still kind of try to keep to the properties we have permission to. So I would think number one, too, you got to stay within line of sight of your drone. 3 miles on the ground. I mean, that's going to be pushing most professional model drones to be able to get that far from one spot. And hobby model drones, you're not going to get that far. I mean, you're just not going to. Here in West Virginia, when I put my drone in the air, I can get out about a mile with it. And so that covers a lot of ground, but that's not going to cover the amount of ground that you were on.
Right.
So, yeah, definitely a disadvantage where a dog's better. Huh.
Try
maybe
it. Go ahead.
I might pop in there. Here, let's. I don't know.
In your bottom left corner, when you move your mouse, does it have like an audio and video thingy?
Yeah.
Click your video to stop your video, and then turn it back on again. See if because that's what I had to do to my audio last time. Maybe it'll work for your video.
Yeah, it's got my video completely blocked out, like I can't use it. Well, I don't know. Maybe I'm just here by audio right now.
It's weird.
Huh. Yeah. So I guess you got me by audio with my name on the screen.
Yeah. Well, I think I didn't know how much. I didn't have much more else to talk about. I was about to ask you right before we kicked us off if you had anything to add.
Well, that's I guess the bottom line is for hunters out there just to be careful who they hire, because like you said with the dogs, everybody and their cousin has a tracking dog now. Unfortunately, half of them are fluffy from the couch, and
Yeah.
now everybody and their cousin is going to have a drone, and unfortunately, these aren't going to be skilled outdoorsmen with these drones. They're going to be guys trying to make a dollar with their newest toy, and they're not skilled at going in the woods and reading sign and looking for deer. Their skill is playing games with their thumbs, and they're converting that into a money making thing by flying a drone. So
Right.
I guess that's the bottom line, and to educate yourself and know the pros and cons of both. And I hope we covered some of that this evening.
Yeah, I hope we give hunters a better understanding of, like you said, the pros and cons of both. And
Yeah.
but the drones and the dog thing kind of go hand in hand. Because I say, like in a lot of my videos, is to try to educate hunters and tell them not to be afraid to interview your tracker. Because yes, you want the tracker's interviewing you as a hunter, and like you really want someone to come out. But I tell them all the time not to be afraid to ask them questions, because there are so many people out there right now that think just because their dog can follow whatever their training track looks like, their two who's on their tracking shoes with a bottle full of blood, they can follow that for 100 yards after 2 hours. Doesn't mean they can follow a gut shot deer that's not bleeding anymore for a mile.
Right.
After 24 hours.
Right. Exactly.
And there are plenty of testing available. They have the UBT, now the ABTA is gaining a lot of popularity, and through Longspur, the WGT now.
Right. So yeah, there's multiple ways to test your dogs, and multiple ways for hunters to make sure these trackers are educated. And the biggest thing is if I was going to try to find a tracker for myself, I'd say, send me pictures of your last 10 recoveries from this year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, especially if it's the rut,
Right.
And if a tracker can't send me 10 recoveries, should I be hiring them to come find my trophy?
Right.
I mean, that's the way I look at it. So many of these people are hobby trackers. They don't even take 10 tracks in a year. So how can that dog be conditioned? That'd be like handing me a ball glove and a baseball bat and telling me go play Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
There's no, I know how to play baseball, but am I a major league player? No. I might be able to get out there and get in the way, playing some defense and maybe stop a ball or two. I don't think I could hit a 100-mile-per-hour fastball,
Right.
but I could call myself a baseball player.
Yeah.
And that's what happens in the tracking world. Even a blind squirrel find an acorn every once in a while, and that's the way some of these trackers are. They'll find one every once in a while, and they'll have 4 or 5 pictures, and they'll blow it up all over Facebook and Instagram and Twitter how good they are. But when you go back through their page, it's the same 4 or 5 pictures over and over and over. Hey, send me the pictures of your last 10 recoveries from this year. That's a good
Right.
question for hunters to ask.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I run into them a lot where, they'll see my truck, it's all decked out now, and they're like, "Oh, I have a tracking dog too." I'm like, "Okay, how many, how many tracks do you usually do?" And they're like, "Oh, I think we did like 3 or 4 last year." And like, "Well, how many out of the 4 did you find?" Like, "Oh, we found 3 of them." And it's like, well, those are actually, when they tell somebody, if they just told them percentage wise, but it's, and then you start asking them more questions, you find out it was for family members that they just didn't track the deer. They just shot one in rifle season and put the dog on it, and it was 100 yards later. So like, you're not really actually a tracker. You have a dog that you just put on a bloodline. It's not using it the way we use it, where we're usually somebody's last hope, and
Right.
which is actually what I was going to name my business before I came up with Against All Odds. I'd thought about Last Hope.
Yeah, that would have been a good name.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
But yeah, they've already tried to do everything else before they call the dog, and now we're stuck working through grid searches and deer that have been bumped 2 or 3 times, and
Right. But yeah, it's I just think of continue to educate hunters. Hopefully hunters will start taking notice and educating themselves also. And hey, we'll see where this drone thing takes us this year, and see how big sky dogs can get.
yeah, for sure.
Yes, sir.
All right, Sean, we'll wrap it up then, but it was good talking to you, and I appreciate you getting on here to talk to me about with it.
Sure. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate you having me on, Seth.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay.
Have a good evening.
Yep, you too.
Hold on, video's not over. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Again, if you didn't already, please subscribe. Like I said, we're going to be doing a giveaway here. And to kind of conclude what we had said in the video. What's up, guys? This is inside the kennel. Little sneak peek. We just got this kennel built. Well, I did. I am a handyman. When it comes down to drone versus dog, there's not really one better than the other per se. It's, I believe it's more of a personal choice or preference of what you as a hunter like. Whether you want to watch a dog work and recover your deer, or if you want to watch a drone come out and find your deer. Obviously pay attention to your state laws. It is still illegal in Pennsylvania, but if and when it does become legal, just keep that in mind, whether you want a dog or a drone, because yes, drones, depending on the day, and depending on the day and the circumstances, a drone might be able to find it faster than the dog, but you're also gonna be paying more money for the drone. Honestly, dogs look cooler, okay? If you don't believe me, here's a picture of me with Hannah Barron petting my dog. When's the last time somebody asked to pet a drone? Just throwing it out there. All right, guys, thank you for watching. We'll see you on the next one.